At what point does the just talking about writing take precedence over the act of writing itself? That is a question that I've been struggling with a lot these days, because I am someone who started this platform to talk about writing, and I realized over the last 2 to 3 months I had talked about it a lot more than I had actually put in effort to write. And that is where the problem is. And that's the thing. Over the last 2 to 3 months, I've actually had more time to write than I had before. And I had done less writing in the last 2 to 3 months than I did previously when I had less time to write. So at that point, I started thinking, is my love for writing simply performative, or is it actually there? And that is when I had to zoom out a little bit, because it's not performative. I have enjoyed writing in the past. I do enjoy it. But maybe at some point I started enjoying talking about it more than actually writing. And that's when I realized I had a problem. So I watched this video by this guy Josh, because you must have seen him. He makes really good content. But I was struggling to tap into the flow state that I used to previously tap into very, very easily and very, very quickly. So I realized there must be something wrong, because this is not me. So he asked us to list all the things that we are ashamed of. And I did. I made a long list. It could be addiction or lethargy or envy or anything that you're ashamed of. You know, this ugly, disgusting part of yourself that you don't want anyone else to see. Write it down. Make a list. 2 pages worth of list. And then pick one of them. And then write about it. Describe that feeling in detail. Why you do it. What makes you do it. And that humanizes this part of yourself. Because I feel like a lot of writers' block or the shame also comes from the fact that you think you're not good enough to write. I think that is what was happening with me. For the last 2 to 3 months, I used to talk about writing a lot, that I had set the standard for myself so incredibly high that I could not meet it. And therefore, I was just shameful. I couldn't write. So I think in the future, I would not like to talk about writing as much. I would rather present my writing. I'm going to have to figure out how to do that. But I feel like that is more honest, that is less performative, and that is more authentic. And I owe it to myself to present myself that way. So Josh often talks about replacing your need for dopamine, the dopamine hit that you get from smoking weed or doom scrolling or drinking alcohol, with writing. And that sounded a little unrealistic to me, because as much as writing can be enjoyable, it doesn't really hold the power to, replace that level of dopamine hits. Like, my neurotransmitters must be fried. So it seemed a little unrealistic to me. But I was like, what the hell? What do I have to lose? Might as well try it. So over the last 2 weeks, I woke up and the first thing I started doing was just writing. Sometimes I would write the story that I'm working for, or sometimes I would simply explain in detail one of my flaws. I would pick a flaw and I would go into detail about why I indulge in it, how it makes me feel, and kind of humanize this monstrous, ugly, disgusting part of myself. And one of the things that really did for me was it made me not hate it. And when I started to not hate it that much, it helped me reduce it. And that was way more progress than I expected myself to make in just 2 weeks. And that brings me to another point. A lot of the times, we make it so big in our heads that we don't realize that this is actually doable. And in the last 2 weeks, I have written a lot more than I did in the last 3 months. And it was because I didn't talk about writing, and I I didn't force myself to write a particular thing. Because for me, writing would be like, if I'm not writing my novel that I'm working on, then I'm doing something wrong. I should be focusing on finishing it. I should be focusing on finishing that fucking story. But sometimes I just don't have. I was drawing a blank and then I would simply not write. But I feel like writing something, even if it's unrelated to your project, is better than not writing at all. Because I had not exercised this muscle in a very long time. So, kind of just writing about the worst parts of me in gross detail, like, going into why I'm addicted to something and talking about it, or, just like things that I'm not very proud of in my nature, in who I am as a person, talking about those things on paper. It was healing. And it wasn't just healing, it gave me clarity and it helped me write something. And I did this on paper instead of doing it on a device. Because he also said writing on paper is human, and that felt like some philosophical bogus to me, like, okay, we're just being dramatic now, pen to paper. But apparently there is a neurological reason behind it that I still haven't looked into. But what I can say for a fact is that when you write on paper, you just hit the flow state a lot quicker than typing on your laptop, because someone said that is typing, that is not writing. And that made sense. So I'm not saying you should write on a paper if you don't want to, that's totally up to you, but I do think there is merit to that. So I think going in the future, I don't want to keep talking about writing as much as I did in the past. I think I want to present my writing. And that is something that is very vulnerable to me, presenting my writing for critique. But I feel like I have to start somewhere, might as well start here. So that is it for today. And I love you guys. Bye.